And one thing that's really cool about Lightroom is it has all these kind of preset filters. And it'll start with recommended filters. It'll kind of analyze your photo and recommend various filters to make it look a certain way. Hey y'all, Jerry Work with Work Media here, and another episode of Work Media TV. Today I thought we would look at an image and do some processing, or at least the way that I do it. That doesn't mean it's the way you do it. It's just the way I like to do things, and maybe you'll get some ideas for yourself. I generally do some processing on the images that I use for social media or whatever because I want them to pop. I want them to look dramatic. I want them to look different from what anybody else is doing. So I very rarely post a photo straight off my phone or from my camera before I do some work on it. So I'm going to flip over here. This is a folder on my computer that's basically a photo dump from my Canon EOS R mirrorless camera. And for each photo, there are two files. One is a CR3 file and the other is a JPEG file. The JPEG file will represent whatever adjustments you made on the camera the day you were taking the picture, whereas the CR3 is the raw file. So generally for post-processing, you want to start with the CR3 file, although sometimes I'll use the JPEG file if I just really like the way it looks. But so I've selected a file or an image that I think looks pretty interesting, and I'm going to open it with Adobe Lightroom. I am an Adobe guy. There are lots of options when it comes to image processing. There are even lots of great phone apps you can use these days. But I am going to use Lightroom. And one thing that's really cool about Lightroom is it has all these kind of preset filters. And it'll start with recommended filters. It'll kind of analyze your photo and recommend various filters to make it look a certain way. And these are pretty cool. As you scroll through here and mouse over these little icons, it will change the image. So I really like that one. So a lot of times I'll start with one of these and then I'll sort of make my own adjustments to it. For our demonstration today, let's just not apply any of these and do our own manual editing to it. Lightroom has great editing parameters. So like if I didn't like the brightness or the exposure of the image, I could increase the exposure. Now this actually looks pretty good. This was taken on a bright, sunny, blue sky day, and the Canon EOS R takes great photos. So I'm happy with the exposure. Really, I think the contrast looks good. Maybe I'll increase it just a little bit. And then sometimes I'll play with white balance and blacks balance just to make it look, just experiment. But in general, this looked pretty good. One thing I'll often do is kind of crank up the vibrance. I really like deep saturated color. And an effect I very typically use is the vignette, which if I pull that back, you see it kind of applies this dark gradient around the edges of the photo. So this is starting to look more like what I want. But now I'll show you a trick that I use a lot just because I just think it's a really neat effect. I'm going to suck out all the color except for the red. And so what that's going to give us is basically a black and white photo except for red. And what I have to do is use the color mixer section of our adjustments and just pull the saturation back. With red, I want to leave. Orange will pull back. Yellow, green, and you'll see the photo begin to look black and white. And there you go. I've pulled out all the color except for red. And then for red, I'm even going to crank up the saturation a little bit, the luminance. So there you go. That's a pretty neat photo. And, you know, you don't want to overuse this. You wouldn't want all of your photos to look like this, but it's just a neat effect. So this is just an example of all kinds of different ways you can work on your photos. Dehaze is something I use a lot. If the photo looks kind of maybe a little cloudy and I really want to, you know, kind of give it some focus, clarity. It is a very similar thing, you see. So yeah, so when I'm happy with the look of the photo, and I'll do another trick. I don't know if this will actually come through in the video. I'm going to try this. If I lower, I don't think it will, but if I lower the brightness of my screen to about 70%, that will better reflect what the image would look like in print. I don't worry about that for stuff for the web, but that's just something for you to know. So when I'm happy with it, I'll go File, Export, and for the web, I usually set the long side to 2400 or maybe 2000 pixels. Quality, I usually go around 70%, sometimes 80. And then click Export, select folder, and it will export your file. And that's how it works. So again, there are lots of different ways to do this. There's a whole universe of things, but that's just one demonstration of the way I like to process photos. If you found this interesting, I invite you to contact me at Work Media. You can email me at info@workmedia.net or look us up on any of our various social media channels. If you found this interesting, I do invite you to subscribe to the channel or like the video or leave us a comment. I would love to hear what you think about it. And in the meantime, that's it for today, and we will see you next time.